It's still happy hour with John Gaskins, so go ahead, have another.
So what you're saying is kids don't always pick the schools that are offering the most money?
Yeah. It sounds crazy, I know. It sounds crazy, I know, but it's true.
Okay. But every school that's going after these big fish are offering them, it's just like the scholarship days, which we still live in as well. There are scholarships. We'll remind people of that. But, I had two boys who played football, and, we, after a recruiting visit to a school, you sit down with the head coach on Sunday morning before you're about to leave town, and the coach will tell, in this case, it's Division II, so it's a head coach. And they say, okay, we'd like to have you come here. Here's what we're offering. And, and it was as in what kind of scholarship. And, it looks like you qualify for an academic scholarship. So it looks like, we don't have to offer you as much of a football scholarship because you're getting an academic one as well, and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, it's always been a business with money involved. But most kids are told by the schools they're wanting to play for in the NIL world with NIL money. They get offered, and then they go back to the drawing table, and this school X is offering me Texas is offering me this much, Alabama's offering me this much, Florida's offering me this much. That's generally what's happening, right? Through all the big time athletes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to the portal last year. I can recount a story from our first portal experience as agents. We had a couple kids obviously in it due to a variety of issues, and it's similar to high school recruiting. They were getting offered like, hey, here's what we can offer. Here's the money we can offer. Here's 900,000. Here's 600,000. Here's 300,000. And yeah, you'd be correct in saying, yeah, it's like it's almost a money game in regards to like how much money do you really want to make? And the conversations we have with the players is, what are your value system? Like, what do you value? If you want to go make a lot of money, this school has $900,000 to give you, but it's also about education in regards to, okay, not only how you manage your money, like, education, like, you have to pay taxes on that money and stuff like that people tend to forget. But also, like, are you going to be happy there? And we had, there's kids that'll turn down lots of money in favor of the culture. And we've seen it obviously at South Dakota State with, kids turn down money to stay at South Dakota State because they love the culture that's been built there. And, kids at Augustana under Coach Olszewski that have turned down leaving to stay with Coach OJ because they love the culture there. Or it happens a lot more than people think, as kids are becoming wiser, in my assertion. And people are becoming a little more wiser to like, hey, money doesn't always equal success / happiness. And that's where I think, John, and not to continue to dance around a question if I am, but where we come in is we feel like there is a middle ground where you can make good money, have scheme fit, and have a chance to play at the next level. I'm sorry if I'm missing your questions here. I feel bad.
No, you didn't there. And, you're illuminating on some things while you're at it. But I guess before I ask the question, I think I'll ask one that a lot of people want to know. What percentage of the NIL money, and I'm talking about your NIL clients going for NIL money at colleges, does your agency get? What percentage of what they get do you guys get?
Definitely. That's again, great question. And there's a wide variety of percentages nowadays. I'm hoping the NCAA will regulate and make it where everyone has to take a similar amount. But there's agencies taking up 20%, 15%, 10%. There's lots of percentages out there. I don't want to divulge any of our business, but I will say this: our percentage is extremely, extremely fair and highly competitive with anybody in the NIL space. Because again, not to dance around it, we feel that we build long-term relationship and we want you for the NFL. So why would we want to take advantage of you and try to make the most of you right now if we feel we want to create an intentional relationship? And John, and this is actually a good point to that point. If you go on our website, if you scroll down, there's a testimonial section, and there's kids from South Dakota whose parents have written testimonials on our website that talk about the way we do business in terms of fairness and equity. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, for the sake of any athlete out there, but more so for the average sports fan, most of us are not athletes or parents of highly coveted athletes working with agencies. I'll happily direct them to your website. Just again, learn more about this process and what it's like for these kids that you guys deal with. So, what is that website?
www.csgathletes.com. Letter C,
Okay.
SG, and athletes. And then on social media at CSG Athletes, Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah. So, I want to go back to near the beginning. We were talking about CSG and this agency, and you're quite aware of how nasty the industry is. And as I mentioned at the top, scumbags, slimeballs. That's the overall impression of NIL agents. And again, you're a scout, not an agent, but you're in an agency, and you're part of you're a big part of the process of finding the clients for these agencies. And these agencies wouldn't exist unless you guys all make money and pay your bills, or else you wouldn't want to be in this line of work. So the athletes do make money for you. What, first of all, about the industry that you had heard that is nasty that you wanted to avoid? What are some of the horror stories or examples? There's plenty that people can read out there, but what specifically were you guys looking to avoid to establish yourself as the good guys?
Yeah. Sounds corny, but honesty and transparency matter to us at an extremely high level. Transparency and authenticity. Like at the end of the day, John, I get it. It can be nasty if you allow it to be, just like anything. If I have a problem drinking too much Mountain Dew, it gives me a gut. Like anything in excess is bad. But we want to come in and be extremely authentic and honest and transparent and provide wise counsel for long-term stewardship.
So what you're saying is that the nastiness in the industry had to do with a lack of transparency? Like, what are some examplements of lack of transparency that you've heard about?
Okay, yeah. Well, without naming any names, not going to throw mud, because we want to only talk about what we do well. We don't want to knock anyone else.
We just want to glimpse.
I've heard stories of kids getting overpromised, like, hey, if you come to our agency, we're going to give you, you're going to make $600,000, and they're telling this to kids that are sophomores or juniors in high school, and you can't make those promises because you haven't had those conversations yet. I know college coaches don't have those conversations at that age, and getting these kids committed to these contracts, and then in the contracts, there's always little small fine print in there, and these contracts that these people give out to these families, and families oftentimes don't always do a great job of looking over some of those things, and they can be missed, and they can get locked into contracts that they didn't realize were as extensive as they previously thought. I'm trying to think of other examples. Sending kids to places, like convincing these kids that, oh, this is a great fit for you at this school because of da-da-da-da-da, and which is not the truth. And they're just trying to make the most money off the kid. And that was the highest bidder. And the kid gets locked into a school and doesn't fit him, and he ends up fading into the darkness. I can think of a player right now that happened to, that would have been probably an NFL player if he would have had good counsel, and he ended up having poor counsel, and it obviously torpedoed his career. We oftentimes hear about stories of kids that have made it, but there's a lot more kids that don't make it because of poor decision making and poor stewardship of their career. And that's where I feel like we come in, because we feel, obviously, John, I am probably the least cool guy in our agency. But I get to learn every day and glean wisdom from guys like who have been doing it for 40 years in the NFL and have represented all pros and Hall of Famers like Tom Mills and Drew Pittman are legends. Tony Dungy, last thing I'll say, Tony Dungy did a call with us, 8 months ago, right when we started, 9 months ago. And he said, the way you're setting this up, it'll take time. But when you get it set up, the message will resonate in the space. And we have seen that come to fruition times 30. It has resonated in the space.
Yeah. So I think, I think that covers it. When you keep hearing that the industry is nasty and some of these guys are slimy, and you've mentioned why you guys are not that, but it seems to me that whatever you want to call it, in the sense of the nasty part of the industry, I get, dancing with the devil, necessary evil, whatever it is. I mean, let's talk about things from the schools side, the program side, at the major league level, Big Ten, SEC, I'm sure Big 12 now as well. They all have general managers. So who are you dealing with from the agency side when it comes to negotiating offers for your clients? General managers, head coaches, And then at the lower level, like SDSU, I'm guessing head coaches directly.
Well, we're really fortunate because of, again, having Tom and Drew and the respect they've known. They know all these guys because when they got in, these guys were young scouts. So we typically deal directly with the GMs and then head coaches. I mean, this last year in the spring, I was on the phone with a lot of head coaches at different schools, having conversations about kids. And then lower, the FCS level, Tom has a great relationship with Dan Jackson because of Chase. But we have a great relationship with Dan Jackson and Tyler Rice at SDSU. They do a fantastic job. USD, I know that I have not had a chance to meet Coach Vitson yet, but I've heard great things about him. And then the basketball space, Coach Eric Peterson is fantastic. The job he does down there is world class. And then Brian Peterson at SDSU, same thing. I think our state, not to continue to go off chart here, John, but I think our South Dakota schools, we're very lucky in our state to have a lot of great coaches / people, OJ at Augustana and Cody Schilling at Augustana. Like, we have a lot of great people in our state that are working at these colleges. So side note there, but we are very lucky as a state. And that, like,
so how, we talked to them. How does it work with them? Whether from you, the talent evaluator that says, hey, I got this kid, because they're evaluating talent as well, and they have assistant coaches evaluating talent that they might want to, they're going to the football games, they're watching a bunch of film. But when it comes to you working with them, first of all, it sounds like they all want, to a degree, your help as an agency to land prospective players that will help their teams. So how does that first conversation about a potential athlete that you maybe have talked to, they want to play for that team, or an athlete that you haven't talked to, but you said, hey, there's a good one out here. How does it work, the communication initially with coaches? Because we'll keep it here in South Dakota. Let's go to South Dakota.
Yeah, South Dakota. Well, first thing I'll say, my bad. Go ahead. My bad, John.
Nope. I cut myself off. What's the process like in dealing with coaches on their end with the agency?
Well, I just first say I scout for our agency. So, like, I think if the schools do a good enough job, they don't need my help unless there's a really under the radar player that I say, hey, you should take a look at this kid. Yeah. But like, if we represent a player for that university, atypically we'll reach out to, when that negotiation time comes, we'll reach out to obviously the family and the player first, say, hey, what would you like out of this deal? And then we go to the university, the GM or the head coach, say, hey, here's what they're looking for. Here's what we're looking for. What does this look like for you? And then kind of find a middle ground. Does that answer? That's a pretty boring answer, but does that answer?
No, it's fine. It's how often will they call you guys and say, hey, do you got anybody? Or what do you think of this player? Or do you know what kind of value this price tag this player may demand from us at this level, at SDSU, USD, et cetera?
Depends on the relationship. Like, obviously, I mean, it depends on the trust. Like, if a coach has, at any level, not in South Dakota, any place, if the coach has a relationship with us, they know they can trust us because we're not going to go blab. They'll call and say, hey, what do you think of this player? Or what are your thoughts on the value of this position? But then, no, obviously, that's not all schools, though. Some schools are really tight to the vest with certain with everything, just because they're a little more cautious.
Okay. What kind of, nobody wants to talk about the thing that fans want to know most about, which is dollar value of NIL deals, particularly of the ones that we know best around here. And I understand that everybody's very protective of that. But you've already said the average NIL deal for an athlete, just a big ball of wax all over the country, is $600. And you've mentioned kind of the things that are attached to that. But again, more typically for a South Dakota kid, I know the dollar amount, there's differences, but what do they get themselves into if they're a high NIL athlete for that school here locally?
Well, I mean, you talk about deals outside of their revenue share. You're talking just the deals like the brands with the, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
To be honest,
your agency, cut those deals? Yeah.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't want to talk too much about this because it is privacy to the player, but I would say, with the high level players in our state, whether it's at USD or SDSU or whomever, there could be money made if they do a really good job in marketing the brand. And that money can be anywhere from, like you said, a couple $100 to, hey man, if you're proving a really valuable asset for a big brand, you can make, 1,000 plus. But the theory that you're making 50 to 100,000 in just outside deals, that's reserved atypically. We heard this from a very well-known brand beverage company. The average, person, the average athlete making, 50 to $100,000 in branding is like 3 or 4 of them in the country. And they're all the ones you'd imagine, like the Arch Mannings and the big names with the big followings. Even the star players in our like Midwest region, whether it's Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, you name it, aren't making as much as people would think.
Okay. Do they have to be attached to name, image, and likeness? And I'm not talking about the South Dakota kids, but just like in general, is there a rule that you have to have a name, image, and likeness deal where you're endorsing a product as a college athlete? Are there in some cases it's just money beyond the revenue share that they're getting from the school?
What
kind of rules and guardrails are there to uphold what this being allowed to happen happens?
Well, this is going to sound politically correct, so don't hate me too much here. From my knowledge and what I know, when we go through that process of identifying deals, our first thing we do is we go to what are the NCAA rules in this, what are the schools' rules in this, because we don't want to have any problems with eligibility or stuff like that, and we want to follow the rules to the dot. And so I typically, like whether it's a Big Ten school, SEC school, Pac-12, or Missouri Valley Summit League school, is we want to work in coordination with their compliance to make sure that the deals that we bring to the table for the player are marching all that. And obviously there used to be a thing called NIL Go. You filled out, like once a player got a deal, you filled out the deal online if it was below a certain amount of money. I don't know. I think that system may be going away. I don't know for sure, but that was the reporting system.
Okay. Because again, I think the average fan, this is a lot. But before we talk to you, a lot of this is over their head. What does it mean? Do they need an NIL agency to have an endorsement deal that is truly name, image, and likeness? I'll use an example, and you can tell me what you know about this. You go into a Casey's gas station, you might see a big cardboard cutout of Chase Mason, hawking Dr. Pepper. Okay, so we all see that, we all know it. Dr. Pepper. So obviously he has a deal with Dr. Pepper. That deal or any deal where it's clear, like Maya Sellen, she's a few years back is promoting a local, I think, assisted living home. Mm-hmm. Okay, so obviously they're getting paid by these companies to do these endorsements, which they used to not legally be able to do, which is something many people were crying for them to be able to do because they carry value as college athletes and they should make some money off of their accomplishments and whatever companies feel they are worth. Now I'm babbling, but you see where I'm going here. Do they need an agency to strike those? How often is an agency involved in striking those deals? Or do companies like, say, Dr. Pepper or an assisted living home just ring up these kids, and they can do it on their own?
So atypically, agencies can sign, like when you have a contract with a player, it could be where you're exclusive representatives of your NIL or non-exclusive, and that means the school can help. And usually the schools have done a pretty good job. Like, speaking from what I know of, I know Dan Jackson at South Dakota State and the SEC has done a good job of like helping their players and making sure that their players have opportunity with their collector or with any schools. I mean, every big school has collectives that they help players find brand deals to bring to them. And I think a lot of schools do a really good job of that. But I would say in regards to what we do, I think it's very valuable to have an agency that helps ascertain these deals because the legalities of it, we can go through all the contracts, read through everything, make sure fine tooth comb it. And then also we can, with our marketing team, which I think is the best in America, not trying to be exaggeratory. It's legit. They have contacts with, the big brands, Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, Chipotle, and they can make one email, one phone call, say, hey, are you interested in this player? And if they are, we can work through negotiation of, okay, what the benefit is. And I'll give you an example. We have a couple of players right now that I've been spending an extraneous amount of time on to get deals with a brand and with a chain, a business chain, a big name business. And there's not a whole lot of there's no money being exchanged right now. It's just product or business service. But it's with the goal of saying with all these players, it's like, hey, if you do a really good job of this, there's benefit long term. But it's about building relationship and showing them value. You provide value, and I really do think, John, and you can appreciate this. Your dad, it's helping young people understand, like, do a service, get a service. But if you don't do your part of the service, why would they give you a service? And I think it's a life skill to be able to have and help conducive to building how to have conversations, how to carry conversation, and to market yourself.
Thank you. Let's go back to the process. We've talked about the process of kids deciding on NIL agencies, deciding on schools, how that's all linked, how it happens, the first school the kids go to. And, we want to kind of maybe hone in more on our colleges here, the Jacks, the Yotes, D2s like Augie and USF and Black Hills State. The athlete has been at the school for maybe just 1 year, their freshman year, maybe 2 years, whatever year their breakout year is. And they are all conference, maybe all American. And we all know that the big power conferences are watching for them to see which athletes can help them as transfers, knowing that they're going to make a lot more NIL money at those schools. And so how does that process work once an athlete is crushing it? Does your agency seek out athletes that are crushing it to see if they are interested in you helping them get to that Power 4 school and the best possible NIL deal? Is that part of the agency's job? Is that part of your job as a scout?
Yeah. I take a lot of pride in we beat people to the punch in regards to, we know the player's going to be good before they blow up. So I take a lot of pride. We're usually there already. I cross fingers, knock on wood. That's what we want to be. Yeah. But in the idea, in the spirit of the conversation, if we weren't there yet, and say like a player at SDSU is having a monster year, because as we've known, there's been a lot of those players have had monsters years. We want to be respectful of, okay, if they're in the middle of the season, I know and here's the thing, John, we know that there's other agencies reaching out to these kids behind the coaches' backs or whatever, and they're going to these kids and they're talking to them, promising things. We know that's happening, and we know that we don't want to get in that trough with doing that if we can avoid it. We want to go the proper way, the proper channels, and that goes to having a conversation and working in coordination with the player's parents, the player, and even potentially the coaches, saying, hey, we're really interested in representing your player for long term, but we also want to protect your player. Because say, for example, he has a breakout year at SDSU or USD or whatever, but he's even just because they had a breakout year they may not A, be ready to go up to the next level, contrary to popular belief, or B, if you have 1 year left and you're at SDSU still, or USD or whatever, and you have a chance to go play in the NFL, and we're hearing feedback from NFL teams saying, hey, like, we view him very highly right now. Why would you want to go risk that at a bigger school? Yeah, you make some money, but if the situation isn't perfect, why would you risk that? And so we typically will say, hey, like, maybe you should consider staying if it's what's best for your long term. But I try to avoid I saw it being shady, going behind people's backs to gain leverage. I try to always do things very transparently, and I think I speak for our entire agency. That's the way we want to approach things.
But by whose backs are some agencies going behind that you try not to go behind? Are you talking coaches?
GMs, universities? And it doesn't mean everything's. It's not like in one size fits all. Like sometimes if there's a player we want to represent for the NFL and he's in his junior year at an SEC school, I'm going to reach out to him and say, hey, here's what, and usually my message is very simple. Here's what we do. Here's who our client list is. Here's our vision for you. We're not here for just making money off you right now. We really believe you're an NFL player. We want to get you for the long term and work in coordination with you and your family and your coaches to make sure you're in the best position to play professionally.
Okay. But you do some of them are already your clients, but you say your agency does sometimes go after guys or gals who aren't clients that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you see great potential, great financial potential at the next level for. Agencies do that.
Playing potential too. Yeah, I know. Yeah, definitely. 100%.
Okay. Because if that's the case, then again, we're having a conversation with the perception of the industry as a whole is that maybe translated, it's completely legal. You can do that. But it's part of the problem. It's part of the problem of the constant portal jumping in, portal jumping out of what it has become. The consternation of Jackrabbit and Coyote fans that that at least in basketball, they don't get to enjoy a great player usually for more than one season. Football, sometimes more. But you're allowed to go after them. They're allowed to go after their dreams. We've already stated many times, some players do want that more money and a bigger school from where they've started in South Dakota, and some choose to stay because of the culture. Chase Mason would be the leading example of that. But once the ball gets rolling, then how does that work? You're now okay. Well, I got a team for you. Does the agent or the agency use its connections with the big boy schools? What part does an agency play in the school that again, we're saying a South Dakota college athlete may end up transferring to for a lot of money?
So you're saying in hypothetical, if we were to have a player from South Dakota, a South Dakota athlete that wanted to leave, yes, what would be our role in it, correct? Okay. Well, if the player wanted to leave and it was agreed upon within the family and the structure of the system that, hey, I want to go to a different school, obviously there'd be a lot of conversation that would go into that. It wouldn't just be willy-nilly for us. We want to make sure everything's done the right way. Well, then we'd ascertain, okay, what schools are the best fit for said player? Like, hey, is this school fit? Like, and we got to throw money out the equation. Like right now, the money doesn't matter. It's about what school is the best fit for you spiritually, physically, mentally, culturally, and gives you the best possible shot to have success on the field or on the court there. And then after that conversation's had, and it goes, okay, what schools are available out there for that same exact cause? And does the money match and make it worth it? And atypically, I think if you do it in that realm, it makes the window it makes the options come down to a very small portion because you get to weed out all the bad faith actors. And for us, we haven't had a South Dakota athlete leave from our state, so I can't speak because all of our kids have stayed at their schools in South Dakota. Chase didn't leave; he stayed loyal to South Dakota State.
Okay,
Joe's loyal to South Dakota State. But like, I think to the South Dakota kids you're talking about, the one thing I've seen, universally with all those kids, whether they're at Iowa State or whether they're at South Dakota State or at Nebraska with Ashland or Brindley with going to be at Nebraska is, and this is going to sound politically correct, so forgive me, they all are extremely loyal. Like they've been raised right where they're extremely loyal and big picture oriented. And that goes to a kudos to their families for doing that. And I'm not trying to be politically correct. I mean that. It's been impressive. Like really, really cool. So
okay. I mean, did you work with any, or your agency work with any South Dakota State football players who eventually transferred to Washington State and helped them with their deals there?
They were already, so when we got going, that was already done. They were already at Washington State when the time we were involved.
Okay.
So,
the coaches, we'll go back to working with these local coaches. Dan Jackson brings in a couple of D2 guys every year. So has USD the last few years. Do they come to you and your agency? Are you part of helping them scout and find, or at the very least, land if they've already scouted and found for themselves who from Division II NAIA they'd like to see transfer up and help their team immediately? How does that process? In what way can you guys and have you guys gotten involved?
We haven't. They don't come to us and that stuff. They don't need our help. They do a good job themselves. So yeah, they don't come to us.
But do you guys help the players get the best possible NIL deal from Division II to an SDSU or a USD?
We haven't had that situation come up yet. So if that situation were to come up, there'd be conversations with said coach, whether it's Coach Vitzum or Coach Jackson or whomever.
Okay. Is that something you're looking to do or would like to do?
If the player's good enough, absolutely. But then if the player has to be good enough, I think, it's in regards to the local university, South Dakota State, University of South Dakota, or Augustana. I think Augustana does a really good job because there's players every year that are getting smells around the NFL. And I know a lot of scouts that talk about Augustana, or, whomever. They do a good job of developing the kids at their schools. I know it sounds really corny, but they do. So there's kids that always have a chance. One or two of them always have a chance every year, whether they're
Yeah.
UDFAs or late round picks. And so our NFL guys, when our agency, Tom, Matt, and Drew do a good job of having conversations with, like a Coach Jackson about, hey, is there a player? There's a player we're interested in here. Would we love to have a meeting with them if that conversation were to have happen?
Yeah. I'm thinking of like the Griffin Wildes and Evan Bernsteins of the world, or most recently LJ Phillips, South Dakota to Iowa, the lineman Joe Cotton from USD to Cincinnati. I'm not asking you to address those situations; those weren't your clients, but maybe you know how all of this works. Again, we're trying to give fans an idea of how this works. In general, they have schools contact them because they're making a lot of noise, and it's not hard for them to find when they're, again, near the top of the statistical charts or being named to the All-Conference and All-America teams. So the schools contact them, I'm guessing, and then once they become interested in the school, I mean, to your knowledge, do kids typically say, "I just want to play for you, and we'll figure out the NIL later"? Again, I'm talking about like FCS guys to Power 4, or is it more so? No, we're trying to go to the highest bidders too, even though there's not quite as much money for those guys as there is for the 4 and 5 stars out of high school.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can't speak for any of those guys as you said, but what I can say to that note,
the process
is, once the player enters the portal, atypically they have an agent, so the school will reach out to the player. The school will still it's funny, when a player has an agent, the school will oftentimes still reach out to the player first, and the player will atypically say, "Hey, please have this conversation with the agent," and that's when the agent steps in. And I've heard stories of clients that, of kids, I should say, coming from this level that have said, we really like the fit here. We'll worry with the money later. To your point, I've heard that before. And then some kids say, "Hey, I want the biggest bag. I want the most amount of money." And I don't blame them either way. Like some kids, it's a chance to set up their nest egg for life.
Yeah. So some cleanup items to head down the track here toward landing the plane. Is there anything legally an NIL agency cannot do? Like an absolute no in this whole process of landing clients, of representing clients in any part of the processes where they get these NIL deals?
Man, to be honest, John, I am absolutely sure there is. I can't think of anything off the top of my head because, and I say this again as we play, we're so stringently walking the legal line. We don't even get close to breaking any rules in terms of we're very ethically and morally strong. So I can't even answer that because I'm not even sure of any rules that would be illegal because we don't even get close to that realm.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. To you, just as a scout, back to your role in finding players, and not just in your days with this agency, but maybe in the days before where you said you were, you were just scouting and evaluating players as a side hustle, not even getting paid for it, helping kids get to colleges. To you, at what line is appropriate contact in talking to players, initializing relationships with them? Where's the line of, hey, you've gone too far in trying to get a high schooler or a college kid as a client in the way you contact them and where it goes?
I just had this conversation yesterday with a scout from a SEC school about how crazy the industry had gotten, where there's kids that are 13 and 14 years old being asked to make financial decisions and commitments and all these things. And it feels odd and wrong almost. But it's the way the industry's going. To me, it's like at the end of the day, if a kid's going to be reached out to, but when you're 14 years old, you're a freshman in high school, it's 90% of the time, 90% comes to you because you're a freak of nature, like athlete. And so, when we do it, I always feel odd right away when I reach out to the player to get a hold of the parent. So I have to get a hold of the parent through the player. And I always make sure I'm very clear when I message them saying, "Hey, I need to talk to your parent first. Like, I like your game, but I need to have a conversation with your parent." I'm not saying it's everyone else does it, but to us and to me, it's about being respectful of the structure. But to answer your question directly, where's the line drawn? I think when you're an 8th grader or freshman, anything below that, to me, it seems a little bit like in the weeds. It's because like you don't know yet, and it's just kind of like let them be kids.
Okay. And so if you're contacting a parent, are you going to games or summer club games or high school games and approaching the parent, or do you find them on Facebook? Like, how do you get in touch with the parent if you don't know if you don't know them?
I get the number from the player, and I say, hey, give my number to your parent and have them call me, and that's the first contact I need to have.
How do you find the player to get to the parent?
I'll message him on social media saying, hey, my name is such and such, and here's what I need from you. I said your game's fantastic, but I really want to have a conversation with your mom and dad.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think it's only been 1 or 2 players I've had to do that with that are like freshmen or sophomores in high school. I'm like, okay, I need to talk to your parent. And atypically, the parents will call me back right away, and we'll have a conversation. And they always say the same things. We appreciate you because you're not the first person that's done this, and you're the only person that's ever wanted to reach out to us.
Yeah. In that process, has there ever been a time where you felt or were told, hey, you've gone too far, or you stepped over a line?
No, never. Never, because when you operate in transparency and authenticity and you have legitimacy tied to you, I think people know, like, they know your heart and their value of what your heart and your motives are. And yeah, I never had that happen to me.
What have you learned the most out of this process of being being a cog in the wheel of the wild, wild west of NIL, college player, free agency, and free to travel anywhere they want every year?
Boy,
what have you learned, and even in your case, how have you grown so far in this?
John, I could give you a big hug right now for asking that question. It's probably the most important question you ask all day. John, I'm a South Dakota kid, dude. Like, I'm not perfect. I grew up here, and I've had to grow a lot this last year. I've been challenged a lot by my bosses to grow as a man, how you communicate, how you handle disappointment, how you had to be told no, how you handle being told yes. I've grown a lot and I've learned a lot, and I've been really gracious and I'm grateful for the grace that's been given to me by college coaches, whether it's Coach Jackson at SDSU or Coach Peterson at USD, whomever, that have been willing to give advice and counsel that, hey, here's the way that you should do this or should do this, and because they value those coaches and other ones that value the way we're doing our business in regards to value system. What I've learned, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And at the end of the day, like, I guess 3 main points I'll say. 1, you could be hyper legitimate while also being hyper ethically and morally strong. And I take John, so much freaking pride in that, because I would say we're one of the only entities in America that has the level of contacts at our level, which is comparative to anyone in the country, but also is super or morally and ethically bound. We love Jesus and we love people very, very transparently. 2, what I've learned is the authenticity. Leadership means nothing until you're authentic. So being hyper authentic and hyper consistent all the time, every time. For you, John, if I'm coach, I'm going after John Gaskin's 5-star athletes, right? Your kids that are studs. I want to be hyper authentic with you as a father and say, hey, here's what I think of your sons, but I don't want to push you out. I'm signing you, because I always tell kids, I told this to Ashton Copel's mom and dad, we're not just signing your daughter, we're signing your family. And we want to come alongside your family and love your family. And I will say this, John, with every player we sign, I think if you were to ask any of them, I think they would all say the same things. What Cash what Noah or what any of our agencies said, we've never wavered. We've been the same person that we were when we signed them. We've been the same person throughout the process, and we've been the same person in the entirety. We take pride in that. And lastly, John, I'll say this: like, it's a job, and I'm every night, and I'm not exaggerating here. I need you to know how authentic I am when I say this. When I go to bed every night, I tend to take about 10, 15 minutes to pray. And it's like, hey, thank God for things and just pray for wisdom and discernment for the agency. And I'm telling you, I'm doing this a year now, and I still feel the same amount of gratitude and gratefulness that I did when I started this. I love my freaking job, John. I get to get paid a salary to love on players, love on families, and help be stewards in my role as they go throughout their careers. And then I get to know that when I go out and advocate for our agency, I know that I'm advocating for something that I believe in fully, that I would have my own kids go to. And then I get to see the success of, like, obviously I haven't met Baker yet, but we have these NFL guys, but I get to see the success of our clients and the happiness. Like, not the name drop here, but like one of our clients is Sullivan Schlumgen at Iowa State, or I mean, I could talk to anybody. There's a ton of them, but and him and his dad and his mom and I or his dad and his parents and I get along great. Like, I have a relationship with all of our families, not just our players. Every one of our clients that you see on our website, I know their families. And so it makes it awesome because it feels like family. And I think, last thing I'll say, that's now I'm on 4 now. I ramble if you couldn't tell. Is
I know how that goes.
Yeah, I want to be a consistent learner. Like, I don't know everything, John. I promise I don't. Contrary to what you may think. Just kidding. But I don't know everything. I want to be a lifelong learner. But the one thing I do know is that at the end of the day, like, no one's going to love players more than we're going to love them. This is just a fact of life. And no one's going to be more honest and authentic than we are. And we're going to always be truthful. Like, we're not going to always say everything's great. Like, if a player's going through a tough time, we're like, hey, because Tom Mills always says this. Last thing I'll say, I promise. Tom Mills, he's a legend. He always says, rarely is athletics or life a straight line. It's easy to play from the lead when things are going great with the athlete, when they're 5 stars or they're getting drafted first overall, whatever it may be. But who are you when things aren't going great, when you have a career injury or something like that? Who are you? Are you showing up then even when things aren't going great? And I have a litany of things I could tell you this year when things weren't going great with players. And we just said, we believe in you still. Nothing's changed. We love you. We care about you. We're going to walk through this with you. And that to me is much more important because football and basketball are going to end one day. One day players are going to get married, have families, and we want to be with them throughout all of that. It sounds corny. I get it, John. It sounds stupid, but we really believe in that. And I just think we do it at a really high level, and I'm proud that we're from South Dakota.
Thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on everything you and your agency have accomplished up until now. And most of all, thank you for illuminating. We hope some people got something out of this to learn how it all works, at least from your agency's point of view.
Well, thank you. I know I talk a lot, and I apologize for rambling too much.
Nope, you did fine.
I love listening to your show and listening to the coaches that come out here. So it was good. And I know we have a lot of mutual friends in the space. And so they all speak really highly of you. And so I was like, this would be an awesome opportunity to be able to advocate to our state about what we're homegrown. We want the best in South Dakota to come with CSG.
Glad we did it. Hope people got something out of it. Noah Clair, NIL, Scout, and NFL, and all the above. For video producer Cordell Wright, I'm John Gaskins. Happy hour and cheers.
You need anything else, John?
No, I think I'm good, Greg. I think I'm going to tap out.
All right. Have a good night.